Hello guys, welcome back to regularly scheduled content. We're talking all about how to time block for content creators, specifically sex workers, because I noticed for myself specifically that when it was just up in the air, I never was on time with things. I could never figure out what I needed to do. I would write lists and you would skip over certain things. It would just never work. I would try to stick to certain schedules and my brain could not keep it all up here. I had to figure out a way to time block and to figure out a schedule that worked for me. Everyone works best at different hours, and I think that's what time blocking is all about. It's about creating the perfect schedule for yourself. I have 3 different calendar ideas for you. The first calendar is a version for those of you that have a full-time job and it's a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 7 to 5, whatever it is, and you don't have a lot of time during the week to create content. The second version of this is going to be those of you that have a part-time job that maybe you work on the weekend some days, maybe you work in the evening some days, those type of people. And then the third one is if you have a fully open schedule where you're doing this full-time. So those are going to be the 3 calendar options that we are talking about today. And then the next thing I want to talk about is creating lists and also organizing your tasks from most important to least important, and also how to time manage those tasks, because sometimes it is confusing. How much time am I going to need to complete this one task, and not skipping over those tasks. So let's jump into the first part of this. I think all of us work best at different times. One thing that I learned about myself is that certain hours are good for certain things. So when I wake up in the morning, that's when I have time for research or emails or just like general admin type of work, and that's when I'm having my coffee, having my breakfast, just taking it really, really slow. Then I get into the bulk of my content creation. The middle of the day is when I'm feeling the most alive, I'm feeling the most inspired, and I have the time to do the content creation. Towards the end of the day, again, I like to do more of the editing work, or again, a little bit more of the admin work, depending on the day or week, whatever the situation may be. I also notice that I don't typically work on the weekend. So something that works for me is having a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. Even though my schedule is very flexible, it's good to just know when you work best and what type of content you can create at that time. That's the first and foremost important thing. The next thing I want to talk about is creating lists. Before we get into how to organize your actual day time by time, we need to think about the tasks that are at hand. So when I create a list for the day, it is think about the top 5 to 6 things that you want to get done that day, and they have to be in order of most important to least important. So say you need to create content, you need to edit and schedule that content out. You also need to respond to messages and emails, and you also do need to do some promotional work. I think the most important of all those things would be to create the content, and then I think editing, scheduling needs to come next. After that would be doing promotional work and then getting to messages. That's what I think would be most important, and that's how I would organize those things. You're also going to want to complete each task to its completion before moving on to the next thing, but we will get into that because sometimes that changes when we are time blocking. One thing that I like to keep in mind is you only have an allotted time for a certain task. So if you don't finish it, and it's not that important to finish it, then I would recommend moving on to the next task given on your time blocking sheet. If we're talking about just a list in general, you want to make sure you're completing everything from top to bottom before moving on to the next thing, so that you don't have to come back to anything and you're not leaving the hardest stuff for the end of the day when you're already tired and you've already felt like you're wrapping up the day. You're not going to want to do the harder things. I made a couple of options for batch creating content. Before we get into the specific time blocking, let's look at our calendar as a week. Let's look at it as a general whole and as a week. Let's talk about full-time jobs. If you are looking at your calendar Monday through Friday, you have a full-time job in the morning and midday, let's say. You get home around 5 or 6, and then that is normally your wind down time. But remember, this is hard work. This is not going to come easy. You need to figure out what works for you. So if you don't have a lot of energy in the evenings after work, that could be time that you can be doing marketing, research, scheduling, editing, all of that type of stuff. So there's always something you can be doing, even if your time is limited, then you can use the weekends for creating content. Another way I thought about this is if you do have some energy in the week, but you don't have a lot of time because maybe you get off really, really late, but you do have energy, you have a ring light, and you can make content, then you can also use that time every other day doing content creation, and then the next day doing editing and scheduling and marketing, and you can swap back and forth between the two. Next, let's talk about part-time. I think this is really difficult because you don't have rhythm in your work. You don't have a consistent pattern, so you are gonna have to work around that random scheduling. But I think this is why time blocking is gonna really, really help you, because at least that gives you that little bit of balance in your life and that little bit of structure that you need to get this stuff done. For a part-time worker or someone who's in school part-time, or your schedule is just a little bit more jumbled and up in the air, what you can do is still look at your week prior and decide when you're gonna have time for certain things. Now, of course, you're not always going to know if you're gonna have the right type of energy for something, so you can always move things around in the middle of the week or whenever you feel necessary. And I think that that's something not a lot of people talk about when they talk about time blocking. They say, okay, if I schedule this for this time, like that's gotta get done. For me, time blocking just means making sure I have something prepared for that time so that if I'm able to do it, I can do it, and also have an allotted time so that I don't get too hung up on one specific item and not being able to focus on something else. And also losing track of what I have to do. If it's on my calendar and I have to move it, at least it's still there, and so whenever I do get to it, it's there and I can see it and I can see how much time is needed for it. The last calendar that we're going to talk about is the ones that are fully open. This is going to be your full-time job and you have all the time in the world to create content. For me, it's about finding structure to your life. I think that we need some sort of structure. So even if you have all the time in the world, if you give yourself all the time in the world, you're gonna take all the time in the world to get shit done. So don't let that happen, and this is why time blocking is going to be really, really important. I want to show you guys my calendar. So here is my calendar, and this is what it looks like when it's fully booked. What I like to do is do my weeks either the Monday before it starts, or I like to plan ahead for the week, for the next week. So let's just look at this week currently. The calendar that I use is just the Apple calendar. I find that it works best for me because I have an iPhone, I have an iPad, and I have a laptop that are all Apple. Being able to just jump from one to the other and still have my full calendar is really, really helpful. What I like to do is put it in week form, and then on a Monday, I would put together the things and the tasks that I need to get done. And then I would order from most important to least important throughout my day. So let's just look at this week and let's look at Monday. So this Monday, I had to go to rehearsals with Daisy. I like to film behind the scenes for her, and I also just like to be there to support her. So I completely blocked off the time that I was going to be gone. And that includes driving time and all of that, because I don't want to add anything else into the calendar that I'm not going to be able to accomplish. So the first thing I had to do was go to Daisy's rehearsals. The next thing that I needed to do was I had a call with one of my students. So I added that to my calendar, and I know that my student calls typically last anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. So I blocked off the entire hour just in case. So Monday was a very easily structured day because I had calls after calls after calls. And the only thing that I was able to get in between those things was a little bit of editing for a YouTube video. So in between one of my calls, I had editing for a YouTube video. Then I had a call. And then last but not least, I had a worksheet that I had to create and send over to one of my students. So order of importance, I got all my calls done. In between that, I was able to schedule a YouTube video. Obviously, where there are call days, that's what that kind of looks like. But as you see, we go down through the week, you'll see when a content creation day is happening. So the next day, I had to send out a proposal. So that was the first and most important thing that I had to get done that day. I put it right in the morning because that was actually something that easily I could do within an hour. I will say most things you can get done in an hour. And if you don't know how long something's gonna take, I would mark off about 2 hours. But typically things can get done in an hour. Next thing was a call, then I had emails, then I had a lunch, and then I got back and I left a little bit of a gap in between one of my calls, because sometimes right before calls I like to go over my notes and things like that. So I did leave a little gap there, and you can add in something there that's like a blocker so that you don't have to put anything there, and if you do have something that you need to get done, but you know you need a little bit of time in between, you can add a little blocker in between. And then the last thing I had to do was finish up a script and send it out for a campaign. Obviously that is super important to get done, but actually when I was doing my emails is when I found out that I had that campaign, which is why it just ended up at the end of the day there. So that day ended at about 4 o'clock. As you can see, some days end around 6, some days end around 4, some days end around whatever time. I also have it in a view where I only see from 9 a.m. to about 6 p.m. because that's when I typically like to work. I like to work 9 to 6-ish. Anything before that is a little bit too early for me. Anything after that is getting too late. So I would recommend just you can change the view of your calendar. I would just put it the times that you actually think that you'll be able to work. And then obviously as you learn your system and as you learn your schedule, you'll be able to figure out what that time is. The next day I had a Zoom call with a potential business partner. And then I had to do emails for about 2 hours. And like I said, normally you can get things done in about 1 hour, but I know about 50 emails equates to 1 hour, but if I have over than that, if I have around 100 or more, it will equate to about 2 hours. So you can kind of gauge it based on how long it takes you to get a certain number of emails done. And I just base it on about a roundabout number of how long that's gonna take me. And that is something that you'll have to learn as you go forward in this industry. And you'll start to see, oh, it takes me a little longer to do this task, or it takes me a little shorter to do this task, and you're able to kind of change the amount of time it takes you to do something. Some things take only 30 minutes, and so that's something you can think about too. That was actually today. Then I had lunch, and on my lunch, I normally don't take a break. I normally just do a lot of research, or I write things down. I take notes, or I'll watch a YouTube video. So that's kind of what I do on my lunch break. It kind of isn't really a lunch break, but I typically don't actually get anything done in that time, so that's why I put that there as just a blocker. The next thing I had to do was take a call, and then the last thing is what we're doing right now, which is filming this YouTube video. So as you can see, by Friday there isn't really anything after 1 p.m. and normally I do like to leave that open because on Friday I'm over it and I want to be done super early, but sometimes things will get booked up if I'm trying to get a lot done or I have a crazy busy week. And sometimes on Thursday, I'll be like, oh, I really still need to get this done, and then I'll add that in for Friday. So let's talk about the color coding on here. As you can tell, everything is color coordinated. It is very colorful, and I would highly recommend this because it helps you separate in your mind what certain tasks are before you actually start to do them, and you kind of start to associate those colors with that task. And then that way, when you're looking at your calendar, you're like, oh, I haven't done any content creation this week because there's no blue. There's no content creation from Monday to almost the end of the day on Wednesday. So next week I know, okay, I need to add a little more content creation in the beginning of the week. And then also things like deadlines, I make them red because obviously that stands out as something very important to do. There is posting deadlines, which is in red, like I said, very important, so it stands out. The next thing is me time, orange, and I think that is also super important. Then the next thing is yellow, which is editing time for editing videos, pictures, whatever. The next one is being out of town. That one's green, and that actually marks, anything in green actually marks me as busy. So students can't schedule calls with me or anything like that. On my website, you're able to make a consultation with me and schedule a call, but whenever anything is green, it marks it as I am unavailable. So that makes it really easy. Anything in the green, I'm just completely unavailable because I'm going to be out of town or I'm going to be driving or whatever the situation is. That means I'm just out of the house. There's no way you can contact me because I'm not going to be on my phone. The next thing is filming and shooting, which like we said is in the blue. And then calls are purple. Most calls are with like students or with potential companies and brands I'm going to be working with. And then last is the admin work, and that is in pink. That's all the emails and putting together PowerPoints and scripts and campaign ideas and all of the above. That's how I color block my time blocks. Those color coordinations come in handy because you can look at your calendar and be like, what am I missing? What did I not think about? Obviously, things might change around based on plans changing or whatever, and that's totally okay, but at least we have a basis for what the week's gonna look like. And like I said, I normally leave Thursday and Friday a little more flexible just because it's starting to be the weekend, and also because I never know what's gonna happen throughout the week or what type of things I might need to get done later on. So I always wanna leave a little bit of time to have more flexibility. So that is how I plan my weeks. That's how I time block. I hope this video was helpful to you if you are interested in content creation and trying to figure out how to do this and how to get yourself motivated. I have a full video on how to get yourself motivated and disciplined for this type of work. You should definitely check out that video. It's going to be linked here. And with all that being said, make sure you check out my webinar. It's all about tips and tricks on how to build your OnlyFans empire. And I'm also opening up the mic so that if you have questions, I can answer them for you. And it's a very conversational event. So I'm gonna have 20 minutes of PowerPoint, and then we're gonna have 40 minutes of open mic, answering questions and really getting to know each other and supporting each other. It's gonna be a really, really fun event, and it's an exclusive event, so there are limited spots. There are still some spots available, and that link is going to be linked down below. It's going to be at 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, April 16th. I hope to see you there. It's going to be a really fun event, and like I said, it is an exclusive event, so once the tickets sell out, there's not going to be any more seats, so definitely get your tickets now before it sells out. And with all that being said, I will see you in the next video. Bye!